obviously get these stakes that we bought. They're cheaper than the ones we bought the first time, so hopefully they work a little better. But we're actually gonna put one stake on either side of the tubes because they've been bending over a lot. We get some more cable ties, we'll just throw on there. We're just trying to keep those tubes on for the first 3 or 4 years of the tree's growth. And try to get them up and out of those tubes within the next couple of years, and we should have some oaks in there. There's definitely a lot of vegetation, a lot more than last year.
Yeah.
I think we'll just take one pack now and then come back if we need more. Maybe a few apples again this year. Did you spray around that one?
Yeah.
The big thing, especially on the red oaks that we planted, or pin oaks, there's a lot of goldenrod growing up in here, and it has a allelopathic property, so it'll actually slow the growth and maybe even kill the pin oaks. I think it hurts the white oaks too, but I'm not positive. Either way, we're just trying to get a ring of dead vegetation around these and then just keep working our way out until these things can actually get up and above the thick vegetation around them. We got blackberry, we got other trees popping in. Basically just got a clear cut that we've got to kind of manage right around these trees we planted. Right beside Keith is some privet, which is an invasive. We've been trying to treat a lot of these invasives. You might come in with the sprayer and hit this one. If you just cut them, they just sprout back, but there's a ton of little sprouts. Most of that we've been doing in the winter, and it's really effective once you cut them and treat the stumps. It's just really stinking hard to find them right now, unless they're right on the edge of a trail or in the open like this. All in all, though, we've been making progress. A lot of blackberry in here.
Yeah.
Being here in July for sure. Another tube to use. So, I guess a good learning point, especially on this one over here, these stump sprouts of the ash we cut, we probably should have treated. Because those stump sprouts grew pretty darn fast. I mean, they're already 6 foot tall in a year. And a couple cases, they've outcrowded the oaks we planted beside them. This one here had a bunch of blackberry beside it and didn't make it. So, well, we got tubes to use on some of the volunteers, and we're gonna throw those on those now. All right, let's go throw that on the volunteer oak. Yeah, in hindsight, we should have done this last year in the summer. But it's better than doing it next year, I guess. See this little oak coming up here? It's actually got a decently fat base on it. So it's probably been in there as a seedling for a year or two. We're going to throw this tube on it and try to get it up above all the rest of the vegetation around it. Probably spray around it as well. A lot of poison ivy in here, so watch your neck. Yeah, that'd be an example of an ash that we did kill. Probably not a bad move though, because you gotta think like those ash stumps, like this one here, this one didn't sprout. We must have treated it or it just didn't sprout back. But that thing's got a root system 10, 15 feet away from it, you know. And it's drawing all that water, and if it's still growing actively, so it's probably best. We probably should just treat them as we did it, but at least the deer can browse on the ones close to the trails. But you get far off the trail, and the deer don't really have to go into that thick brush to get a stump sprout. But these ones along the trail, they hammered last year, so I think it's probably a good move to leave stuff that's easily accessible, let those things resprout, let the deer browse on those, kind of take the pressure off of these trees and stuff that we're trying to regenerate. And then the stuff back here in the thickets, maybe just treat those and let the good stuff grow up. All right, well here's a pretty good example of why we put these tree tubes on. This is a little white oak that was planted here. Obviously, we either took the tube off or it fell off, or we forgot to put a tube on. But it's been browsed. Pretty much every leaf has been browsed in the past 2 years. Here's a dormant bud from last year. There's one. It's probably resprouted just from this stem because it's probably all that it had the energy to do. We're gonna throw a tube on this. I'm not overly optimistic that it's gonna live, but you definitely gotta do something at this point because it's had browse within the past couple months. We'll throw it on. See, it's right by the trail, so it's going to be an easy one to kind of check on and see how it actually rebounds from this. I mean, oaks are pretty darn resilient. So in theory, if we get this thing on here and it keeps getting a lot of moisture and sunlight, it's definitely got moisture this year. But as long as it keeps getting sunlight and we keep the vegetation cleared around it, it should have a chance of growing. Here's our hillbilly setup from a tree that did not make it. This is how to not stake a tree in.
What do you think our percentage is at? Survival percentage?
I'd say we're at 75 right now. I mean, we have 75, but we found a couple volunteers, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I don't know, 75%. I'd say by the end of this, by the time that they're sapling size, if we're at 50%, I'd be happy. Especially, like, you'd obviously want more survival if you're planting in like an open field or somewhere, but this is like a
just,
really low maintenance.
Regenerating old maple woods, yeah, ash maple.
I don't know if we need a whole lot of these up there, do we? They're all standing.
Yeah.
Well, the deer are coming through here.
I tried to spray a little trail through here.
But it looks like something late. Yeah, dude, there's
some hair.
Yeah. Well, just made a bed for them. I sprayed that out earlier in the year, I think. Hey, we got green. Got a lot of wasps in there too, so don't.
Do you know what kind it is?
That's a bird. Yeah, don't touch that too hard because there's a lot of wasps.
What's this guy?
There's no oak on them. Bad parents, you know. Just let our kids out here. We get to take care of them for a year and a half.
The bur oak lived.
The bur oak.
Bur oak lived. We found red oak there and black oak there, which is what this guy is, yeah. Huge white oak there. No seedling white oaks to be found. Bed there, bed there. Spooked a deer from down there.
There's a track too.
Really?
It's really recent. Probably the deer we just jumped. We're just underneath this apple tree that keeps growing sideways, thanks to the vines. Anyways, it's kind of growing back into the ground, and it creates this nice little backdrop for a deer to bed here. They can look out over 2 fields and kind of see over their shoulder to the neighbor's house up there. We have a trail right here, about 10 feet below, and it's pretty hard to get close to this deer without them seeing you.
Yeah. Just came from that apple tree double bed there.
Got a little trail through here, going from oaks to oaks. I mean, really just going, following our firewood trails. But.
But these are the ones that we didn't really maintain, so they just grew over and turned into little strategic paths. Dude, yeah, there's got to be a bed under there.
Oh, you know.
Just another apple tree bed. Bed here. Where's the other one at?
Right out here. Under this apple tree, imagine that. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're just all, like, there's a bunch of beds in here.
Yeah. Yeah, just little dough pockets. Bed. 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 Trail going right in under this another apple tree. Should I get in there and see what's going on?
Yeah. You getting in from this side? Ow. Oh.
Holy cow, dude. Instant beds.
Matted down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one you can see on camera.
Yeah. Rubs on here too. This is a buck area right here, dude.
Yeah, I would not be surprised.
Those babies.
Kind of looks like it.
Yeah.
Well, we're kind of finishing up for today. We're going to do some scouting, but it's probably going to rain. So we're just gonna kind of recap on what we did. We went around each oak that we planted, what, like a year and a half ago now?
Last March, yeah.
Yeah, so basically it's the second growing season of these trees. We're thinking right now we have right about an 80% survival rate, which is about what we were hoping for. That's so far. So we keep going around and clearing the vegetation around them. We've used the saw today to kind of get back there and get a lot of the briars out of the way. I came in and sprayed in early April and just, you know, you can tell here I did some circles around each tree. Eventually we'll kind of want to get this to about 6 foot, I think, around each tree, just give them plenty of room, because we're trying to baby these things along. I mean, there's a lot of vegetation around it that's growing a lot faster. One thing I think we wish we would have done is came in and did this last year, because a lot of those blackberry would have been a lot easier to get through, and then pretty much just keep it on a spraying rotation around them, and it's going to be pretty light from here on out. And just keep it all herbaceous vegetation around them and not woody stuff, because that's pretty tough to deal with. You have to get a saw out, and that stuff's resprouts. So we're just trying to keep it maintained. One other good thing we've done is kind of created some little trails that the deer have started to follow. There's some really thick areas back there where there's a lot of tops down, and like right in here actually, there's a lot of tops down and rows growing up, and you can't really get through that comfortably at all. The deer have kind of started to follow these little trails we put in. I'm glad we did that back then, because it'd be a lot harder to get to this stuff now. I mean, we buried some of these pretty deep. It was open when we planted them, but that was a year and a half ago, and the briars have really jumped up. So I think we're gonna head to the other patches of woods and kind of scout them and see what's going on back there. We thought about putting a water hole in. I don't know if we're gonna get to that today. Back in the East Woods, we have some ideas on some other things to work on. But let's get out of here now, because it's probably gonna start raining on us.